welcome to edition 115, part 2 of All Killa No Filla podcast with Rachel Fairburn and Kiri Pritchard-McLean. Just before we start, we'll do our usual disclaimer. This isn't hero worship. We do this podcast because of mutual interest in serial killers. As long as we are doing this podcast, it stops us from writing to them in prison.
It does, yes. Nadolig Llawen. This is part 2 of our Alcatraz Christmas special. Right, so you've listened to the first episode, which means you're on to the second. I think that means that you are at the point where you've stopped prepping food, but you are sort of checking on things in the oven, going over and stirring things. I think that's where people will be on Christmas Day. Where do you think you are at Christmas Day at this point, Rachel?
To be honest, I don't really do anything. I just wait for things to happen. I'll be honest, I you know my feelings. Christmas Eve I like, and then Christmas Day, it's quite boring, I find. I just think it's a bit dull. It's like, I don't know, it's just a bit gloomy, I think. I don't think it's particularly, you know, I like the run-up. It's like films, I like the build-up, and then the actual sort of, you know, resolution, I'm like, oh, that was boring. I just like the run-up to things. I like the excitement of the run-up. I think, I don't know what I'll be doing, really. Probably just be doing a puzzle or something like that, I would imagine. Maybe.
Oh, very wholesome. Very wholesome. Will you be watching the King's Speech? Is that your kind of vibe?
I've never watched any of those in my life. I think one thing we know I'm not is a monarchist. I don't think we can ever say that I've never seen the Queen's Speech or the King's Speech ever.
Oh, really?
No.
It'd be the kind of thing where, like, everyone, you're right, would be bored at about whatever it is, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and go, should you put the Queen's Speech on? And then everyone would just be sort of doing what they were doing before, which is like playing with their new game or reading a book, but also the Queen is on in the room.
Yeah, just never seen it, never watched it. Not really from a family that's interested in that. To be honest, I'm not really from a family that are very Christmassy. Like, we'll sort of do a bit of stuff, but not. You know, we're not that kind of family. We're not the kind of family that'll go out for dinner together. Do you know what I mean? We don't need to do that. It's fine.
You're not a matching pyjama family?
Absolutely fucking not. Also, that's something that I am kind of like, people are so impressionable. That's only a thing in the past couple of years. The Christmas jumper wasn't really a thing here until 12 years ago, I'd say. And like, I don't know, I just feel... I just, it's like the John Lewis advert. I've never watched one of them on purpose. Like people, oh yeah, you know, oh, the John Lewis advert. Don't pretend that this is something that's always been a tradition. Like, I just think people are so fucking malleable to nonsense, like consumerist nonsense. It's, you know, it's people that haven't got the ability or the power of independent thought. So they think these are actual things that are tradition, and it's so quick to join in. It says a lot about people, that.
Well, I think we've spoken about this before, and my theory is it's just lots of people who are looking to belong to something, you know, to have like a shared experience they could talk about.
Yeah, we've had one, COVID. What more do you want? There you go. That went well, didn't it?
But you know what? Another thing that I see it happen with is, and I'm always very appreciative because we tend to feature on a lot of people's, but you know when people share their Spotify Wrapped, I have a lot of conflicted feelings about this. Because number one, I think Spotify is like really bad for musicians, and I have it, but sharing it, I'm like, don't tell everyone that you're also a cunt who doesn't care about musicians earning money. So that's one thing that's going on. And then the other thing that's going on is, this is so bad, I'm going to have to tell you a story that you're going to hate.
Yeah.
So Spotify goes, this is what you listened to this year. This is your most listened to song. You know, this is your favourite genres. It's been completely skewed and ruined by my partner listening to it. So it's like, you love Japanese prog concentration music. And I'm like, I fucking don't.
Yeah,
but clearly
no,
he's been putting this on to write. Yeah, absolutely awful. But there's one song that we're like, whoa, this got played so much more than anything else. So I've been on tour this year and my partner's been with me for quite a bit of it. And sometimes you're in a hotel room with someone and you've got to use the toilet and you know, sometimes it's a pane of glass. You know they're going to hear you, whatever is happening. So I started playing one particular song when I went to the toilet. So just to keep some of the magic alive, so he didn't have to hear that. It's an upbeat, incredible banger by Welsh artist Ows Gwyneth. That's YWS. and it's called C'est Bon Avis, which means to like sweet talk me. It's a like real sort of indie tune in the Welsh language, and it kicks in straight away. So it's a great song to put on whilst you go into the toilet because immediately they can't hear you. Anyway, turns out that is he started doing it then because I was doing it, and then it would just make me laugh when I could hear that music playing. I was like, well, I know what's going on in the toilet. It's our most listened to track of the year by at least tenfold, which I think is the nail in the coffin of any romance in our relationship.
Everything about that story, you're correct. Absolutely. Everything. Not for me at all. All of it is awful. I also don't know how accurate it is that Spotify Unwrapped. I think so. The thing is, also Monzo do a Here's Your Year thing.
I hate that.
Now listen, you'll hate this. You've got two options. It says, do you want us to be nice or do you want us to
be savage?
And then they fucking rinse you. It's like, who the fuck do you think you're talking to, you? You're a bank. You are a bank who I fucking pay to have an account with, and you think you're funny. I don't want my bank to have a fucking personality. Like, stop trying to be everyone's mate. It's like, I hate stuff like that. You know when you get on, you remember Virgin Trains used to have, you'd get a cup of tea and it'd say, oh, hey, hot stuff. Oh, can I not just have a cup of tea without something sexually harassing me? This like level of, I think it's so dated, this level of like, I'm corporate, but I'm your mate. I hate it. And it's like, oh, here's what you paid most. Oh, is it my rent? Is it my rent in the flat that's not mine? Is it that? You know, you just think, I don't know, I just think some things, not everything has to be frivolous and light-hearted. You know, like, that's, some people will have times are hard. I don't expect the bank to be having a laugh. It's silly, isn't it? I mean, if Monzo wasn't so easy, if it wasn't so easy, I would have left. Like this year, I boycotted Fortnum and Mason for Christmas gifts because every year I get my Auntie Trish and my Uncle Jack loads of nice little treats from Fortnum and Mason's, right? And they love it. But a bit of the old salmon dill stuff, you know, they love that kind of thing. Anyway, do you know they did a lunch, an event for the Paralympians after the Paralympic Games? And then they had a dinner that they didn't invite any of the Paralympic athletes to.
What?
You heard me. So there was all this, like, I don't know if they were sponsoring something or something like that, but they did this whole hoo-ha, like this event about, well, welcoming back the Paralympic athletes, blah, 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 blah. And then they had a different lunch and didn't invite any of the Paralympic athletes to it. And I was like, I don't give a shit how nice your fucking champagne truffles are, Fortnum and Mason. I am taking my money elsewhere. That is disgusting. So just things like that, I think, I don't know, just, I love walking away from shit now. Like, I would walk away from Monzo if it wouldn't be too much hassle, just for that little bit of frivolity. I just don't think it's very funny. You know? Do you know what I mean? I just don't think everything has to be...
Yeah.
A personal service.
I agree. I blame Innocent Smoothie, who are like, we're just smoothies that are owned by Coca-Cola. And now everyone thinks that their business needs to be a warm thing. I want a dry, faceless corporation who does it efficiently. Yeah. I don't want them making like pithy remarks about how often I've been to McDonald's or whatever.
Exactly. And it's like, so the place that I spent most money in was obviously Marks and Spencer's food, right? Because... how often are we travelling? So train stations, I'm not going to get shit food. I'm like, I'll try and get something healthy. Get myself a little fruit pot. So that's and it was like, and then it sort of like took the piss out of me for going to Marks and Spencer's food. I'm thinking, oh, sorry, I've got to eat. Who do you think you are, Monzo? I don't know. But do you know what it is? I just think it's like, it's the wrong time and it's the wrong tone. And everyone's struggling. And it's not funny.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
My friends are both single mums and, you know, like Universal Credit and PIP and things like that, sent me theirs. And like these like shitty comments from the Monzo being like, well, been to Home Bargain enough, you know, bought enough glittery like wall art, and be like, no, I'm a single mum. I've got to go to Home Bargain to get the kids lunches, you mad bastards.
Yeah, it's just, I just hated it. And it's like, oh, do you want us to be nice or do you want us to be really brutal? How about you just don't do it at all? Because I can tell you now, I know what I spend most money on. Oh, here's my rent. There's the biggest amount of money. Train tickets. I fucking know, Monzo. I don't need you acting like you're some... I tell you what, Monzo, let's have a laugh. Let's see what you're investing in. Should we have a laugh about that? Should we see where my £5 a month's going? Should we have a... Let us know, Monzo. Let's have a sit down and see what you're fucking up to. I swear to God, these people. The thing is as well, I'm one of those people...
Can I tell you something similar?
I don't really care. Like, I just want to get on with my life, but they're making me angry. Go on.
I had a similar interaction with my, you know, when you send off, like, my accountant, or when I do, like, my VAT return or whatever, will be like, hey, can I ask what these things are and do they have VAT on it? And sometimes they're like, can I ask what this payment to Premier Inn is? And I'm like, yeah, it's a hotel. It's the Premier Inn. And I swear to God, they got someone new doing my accounts and they were like, my accountants are brilliant. But she was like, hey, can I ask what these 4 payments in 1 week to B King are? I'm like, well, it's Burger King, isn't it? I can't believe you're making me write this down. It's like, just checking because there are 4 in a week. And I'm like, well, clearly that is a week where my mental health isn't brilliant. I don't want to necessarily... you know, talk about it 9 months later and be like, just because there's lots of payments showing up for BK and we thought maybe it's Burger King, but there's so many of them. You're like, all right, fuck me.
Yeah, I think you can come to a conclusion there. Also, stop judging where someone's having the fucking dinner. Oh, God. I tell you, the thing is, though, I'm just getting to, you know, you get into the end of, you know, there's a bit of time off coming. There's 2 enforced days of nothing. And I'm like, great, I am... very grumpy at the moment because I still at the arse end of not feeling well. I was yesterday as well, so fucking ill, just like exhausted. This is how exhausted I was yesterday. I got upset about Paddington Bear. I was just
for killing the Queen.
Yeah, well, I was just sort of idly thinking, and you know, and I just thought of Paddington Bear, and I just thought, oh God. Thank God that family found him. Anything could have happened to him. It's like, what am I doing? What is the matter with... I just thought I need to go to bed. I'm just absolutely done in. Like, so knackered. But everyone is. It's a miserable time of year. But we're here to... I hope that's uplifted you on Christmas Day. I hope you got some nice presents.
Yeah, I hope you got what you wanted. And remember, if your partner's proposed to you on Christmas Day... Yeah. Leave them.
Yeah.
So, let's go back to Alcatraz. So, it's been a military prison, you know, where people are there between 10 days and 10 years. There have been 17 escapes in that time. You know, they used to brand military prisoners. If they were a deserter, they'd have a D branded into them. Ooh. Or tattooed into them, rather. And if it was a thief, they'd have a T put into them forever.
Good. Bring it on. Let me know what I'm dealing with. Bring that back. If someone's been caught cheating, right, cheat on the forehead. We all know.
Ooh, interesting.
Someone's not paid the tax. Pop that on the forehead. Tax avoider.
Yeah.
Let us all know.
I'd love that. Absolutely
love
that.
Bring back branding. Bring it back.
Make branding great again.
Also, I have to say, if anyone can see in the background here, because I'm moving soon, hopefully, I've got no books on my bookshelf because I don't like people coming in the flat to look round and then, you know, having a look at the books because I think it's very private. You know, I like to be left on. So the only problem is now it looks like a thick cunt lives here. So if anyone is looking at the bookshelves there and thinking there's no books on it, it's because they're all packed away. So I've just had to get that in there. The Kindle is in use, as per.
The Kindle's going there, absolute clappers in that household, don't you worry. Now, Alcatraz sort of starting to be sort of decommissioned as a military prison comes at an interesting time. We've talked about this before. There's a massive boom in crime. I thought it was just because of prohibition, but also there's these other factors going on where suddenly cars get very fast. Ooh. And you can, if you've got a decent car, you can get away from law enforcement, which at the times were like the local sheriffs were often just farmers who were deemed to be sort of fair or had a bit more of a stake in the area. Also, the machine gun comes into play. And also, this is post-World Wars. You have lots of men with PTSD, lots of men with injuries who are unemployable because of that. So there's like a lot of poverty, a lot of like poor mental health. You've suddenly got an incredibly powerful weapon that is available. And also the men are now all trained in combat. And you've got fast cars. And fast cars means you can cross state lines. So bank robberies go up hugely.
And they are men. That is the fundamental thing. That's the main thing.
Yes, sorry, yes. Yeah, the main reason why is men. So the view of bank robberies were that it was like fair game. Basically, no one liked banks. 1929, of course, you got the Wall Street crash. And so people were like, it's a victimless crime to hold up banks, which is why Bonnie and Clyde became folk heroes as well. So that people were robbing banks and then just crossing state lines, because if you cross a state line, that was it. They couldn't pursue you any further. But the flip side of that is J. Edgar Hoover, who kind of oversaw a lot of this shit anyway as his time as a president. Huge amounts of homelessness. They were referred to as Hoovervilles, where all these homeless people were. He set up the FBI.
Hooverville. That's quite hard to say.
Hooverville.
It's not catchy, is it?
No. Well, that explains why I've only just really heard about it. Because it just was not a great mouthfeel to it. So these Hoovervilles are there. It's huge populations of very poor, homeless people. J. Edgar Hoover moves on, sets up the FBI. He's an absolute nutter. We should do an episode on him one day. And he basically is like needs to make the FBI a success to kind of secure his legacy. So that's one of the reasons why he goes after Bonnie and Clyde so hard, because they become these folk heroes. But they make it a crime. So as soon as you do a crime and cross a state line, it becomes a federal crime, which means he said we need a different type of prison. Basically, there's no good having military prisons and sort of like state prisons. We need something called a federal prison, and they need to be much harder than the state prisons. And this is the culture in which Alcatraz is created. Also, loads of state prisons, the guards were paid really badly, so they're really corruptible. So Edgar Hoover sent in loads of undercover agents, did a massive kind of survey on prisons and was like, no, we need to do this. We need to do this like in a different way. So this is where Alcatraz gets turned into a federal prison. The locals hate it. The locals don't want it in San Francisco, because they were like, we don't want all those criminals that are known for breaking out to be kept in there. Because basically it wasn't even the worst criminals. It's criminals who were like pains in the asses, basically. If you were a troublemaker, if you would repeatedly just be a pain in the ass and or escape, then they sent you to Alcatraz. So the conditions, we've spoken about the conditions a little bit, but it is not, the food's great. Yeah. The guards and the wardens eat the food. That's how good it is.
Got your own cell?
Got your own cell. Kind of decent-ish size. But it is a rough place to live. They have to import all the water because nothing grows and there's no natural water source. It's heated by fireplace and it catches the wind, so it's absolutely freezing all the time. The baths that they have, and they only have one bath a week, is in cold, salt water.
Oh, come on.
I know.
All sounds like a very middle-class experience. We're trying to live a bit more sustainably, actually. We're only heating the house by fire, and we're having one cold saltwater bath a week.
So James A. Johnson is sort of headhunted for the job of being the warden. He had reformed lots of prisons, and he was of the view that prison is not a place to rehabilitate. Prison is a place to punish.
Oh.
He'd been involved in San Quentin as well. He was basically, there's only one man for the job. He runs it for 12 years. He's there a very long time. So the first thing they do to adapt it is they change the bars. They put tubular bars on because you can't get weapons. You can't cut. They're much harder to cut, basically. each part of the prison is called something different. Do you know what Broadway is, Rachel?
Is that the walk down the middle of the cells?
Yeah, so it's like it's three stories of cells, and there's snipers all around the top of it. It's so intense, this place. When they arrive, they strip them, and then they have to walk naked through Broadway.
Come on.
I know, and then they have a bath in cold salt water, and then they're given some clothes. So everyone, imagine going to live somewhere for a long time, knowing everyone's fucking seen my asshole immediately as you walk in.
Well, I've been there.
So Broadway is the main bit. These 3 floors of cells with a gun, snipers all the way around the top looking over it. The Times Square is the bit that heads, they call it Times Square, the bit that heads down to the canteen. They have the Sunset Strip as well. They're all sort of obviously ironically named.
Come on.
They refer to the canteen as the gas chamber because there's these like silver looking ornaments.
Serve a lot of
up.
sprouts, did they?
Yeah, quite a high vegetable diet. That was the issue.
What are the ornaments?
These like ornamental silver things.
Yeah.
Gas canisters, tear gas. So
Fucking hell.
should there be an outbreak or anything like that, they would just release them. And they all knew that that's what was up there. Because they'd done, Edgar Hoover had planted undercover agents into the prisons to see what needed reforming. And so come up with this kind of dream scenario. They have snitch boxes, which are what are they called again?
The metal detectors.
That's it, metal detectors. So the metal detectors, on average, so the first of their kind, they're very technologically advanced for the time. They, on average, a prisoner would walk through them 8 times a day. So it was incredibly hard to smuggle metal things in and around. Now, because it's so inhospitable and hard to get to, the families of the guards live there as well. So you've got this weird 2-tier system like zone of interest where you've got these prisoners having a horrific time, but then they could hear kids laughing and playing, and the kids would get really excited if one of the softballs from the rec yard was thrown over because they'd be like, yeah, we've got a ball to play with. And apparently there was a big community feel because they wanted the guards on call there 24 hours a day. So they were like, you can bring your families and we feed you and we put you up in, accommodation. So they had clubs, they had Thanksgiving parties, Halloween parties. They had a bowling alley up there. It was a real sort of...
Oh, I hate bowling.
I hate bowling, absolutely hate bowling. So there was like a real sort of vibe going on there, and it was deemed, if you're a guard, that you're quite well looked after and your family would have sort of quite a nice life. At some point, well, they have some very famous inmates. I was going to call them inhabitants.
Yeah, Al Capone, that's probably the most famous. In the band as well he was, wasn't there? Mm-hmm. Who else did we have?
Well, by the time Al Capone gets there, he's very unwell with neurosyphilis. So the syphilis is sort of taken his brain over. He immediately gets there and tries to bribe the guards, and they're like, yeah, it doesn't really work like this. Because for a start, the whole place has been bugged with microphones. So the guards know that they're being listened to as well. Although he does apparently have sort of a nicer... He does have a sort of nicer cell. When his mum, I think we might have mentioned this on the last podcast, his mum comes to visit him. She has to take her clothes off.
Yeah.
Because
the snitch box got her. But it was the clasps on a corset that it was. She wasn't smuggling anything in. That's what it was. Machine Gun Kelly, George, not the one that's married to, that went out with Megan Fox. The guy... I don't really know much about him. We could do an ep on him, actually. It'd be quite cool. We should do a gangsters episode.
Yeah, he'd be good.
We should do a
Oh, that'd be amazing.
We should save these for an ep.
But I feel there's a weird bit where I feel quite sorry for Al Capone here because he's so unwell by the time he gets to Alcatraz. He's got basically what is advanced dementia, even though he's quite young because of this neurosyphilis. They say he has the mental age of, it starts at about 12 and deteriorates to about an 8-year-old. He's sort of smiling. He's very happy and sort of smiley and kind of sweet. And he's smiling in his mugshot there. He's not the hardened Scarface criminal that he's sort of known as. And also because of this, he still has a reputation of being Al Capone. He became a massive target for the other prisoners. They wanted to be the person who beat up Al Capone.
The ailing Al Capone.
Yeah, you've got a guy with the mental age of an 8-year-old being battered constantly by people because of the fact that he was, a career criminal. And he turned around and he said to the warden one day, he said, well, it looks like Alcatraz has got me licked. And he just sort of settles down and, as you say, plays for the what are they called again? The Rock Islanders, plays for the band. He earns the right, because he's a good prisoner, so he earns the right to play mandala, is it called? And the guitar. Mandolin, that's it.
James Whitey Bulger, who I think he was only something about him. He was in the news very, very recently. He was like I remember reading about him. Everyone's a great ep. They're all really good eps. These I'm loath to.
Do you know about Robert Stroud?
The Birdman of Alcatraz. Tell me about him.
Yes. Well, his sort of...
He wasn't into birds until he got to Alcatraz, by the way.
It's true.
A late comer to the bird community.
Well, he starts off, he has a tricky life. He grows up in poverty. By about 18, he's living with a sex worker and working as her pimp. Someone doesn't pay her, and he attacks them, and it was a bartender, and he murders them. Now, this is all in Alaska, which I don't know why makes it worse.
My feet are cold already.
Yeah, exactly. So he is transferred to Alcatraz as because he's a pain in the ass, basically. And he's living in Leavenworth, and they basically said he's in this prison. And he goes, can I have 2 canaries? And they were like, yeah, okay. And so he gets these 2 canaries, and he starts breeding them. He has over 300 by the end.
This sounds like the setup to a joke, like a pub joke. This guy's in prison and he says, can I have 2 canaries? And they're like, yeah, sure, why not? Anyway, he starts breeding them, and then what's the punchline?
Was something about how women are stupid
yes,
with the setup to that joke. So he got these 2 canaries. He keeps breeding them until he gets over 300. Now, what he's doing is the sort of supplies for the birds are coming in these boxes, and he's getting contraband smuggled in. So eventually it gets found. He gets sent to Alcatraz. Now, he is not told that he's leaving Leavenworth. And his birds, he's given 10 minutes to get his stuff together.
Oh.
And he's like, what's happening? And they're like, you've been shipped out, mate. And so his birds are sent on to his brother, because Alcatraz, like, you're not having fucking canaries, mate, it's Alcatraz. So all his birds get sent to his brother, so he can't carry on with his bird breeding. Now, but he has, obviously there's a lot of birds, Alcatraz comes from pelican, there's a lot of birds on the island. He starts observing birds, he starts going to the library and educating himself. He becomes one of the leading ornithologists. He publishes a book about ornithology. I think it's called like Stroud's Guide to something. It becomes it sells really well. It is still used as an authority on bird behaviour. And Alcatraz are like, you can publish another book, but you're not getting the fucking money from it. But he carries on his ornithology and becomes a really influential ornithologist from inside Alcatraz. There is a film about him called The Birdman of Alcatraz. He's never allowed to see it. And he spends 6 years in Alcatraz in segregation, which is a very brutal way to live on your own. And he spends 11 years in the hospital there. Before he passes away. So he's probably, next to Al Capone, the most famous inmate that was there, but really for his fantastic contribution to what we now understand about birds, Rachel.
Very nice. I mean, I think that's a good example of rehabilitation. I think that's quite a good example. He was stuck in there. He thought, I'm going to learn something, I'm going to do something.
Yeah, but it was also... was he doing it just so he could sneak shit in the boxes?
Oh, no. At least he's interested. You don't write a bloody book on something unless you're interested in it, do you?
That's true. So, in spring of 1946, there's a guy called Bernard Coy, and he's been in there for 26 years. Well, his sentence is 26 years. He's 46 at this point, which in Alcatraz years... It's a bit like Premiership footballers, where they're like, that is unbelievably old because the lifespan was so badly affected, and also, you know, all the other problems that these men had at the time, things like syphilis, things like injuries from the war, just made their lifespans far, far shorter. So he is not the brightest bulb, but he's a bit more intelligent than the people he recruits. And basically he finds a young guy, he's only 19, he's called Clarence. Oh, well, I haven't got his surname written down properly. It's corrected to something. That's not his surname. Clarence is a Native American. He's, like I say, 19. He's pretty vulnerable. And Bernard says, listen, I've worked out a way to get out of Alcatraz. So he's like, but we need a bit of a gang. So they start recruiting. And what they do is they target kids from like a farming background who are strong, who are quick, but who aren't very educated and are quite malleable and look up to Bernard. So they spend months and months preparing for a breakout. So Bernard is studying the guards. He gets to know their timetables. He realizes, you know what, you can get into the gun gallery. There's a bit where they all turn their backs. If you could just climb up Broadway, climb up those cells and get in there, you could do it. So one of the things he starts to do in preparation is he starts to starve himself. Now, that must have been really hard because the only good thing in Alcatraz was the food. So he makes himself really, really, really thin. And then he goes to his mate in the workshop and he goes, can you make me something I can put between the bars and stretch them like a bar spreader? So I don't know how they got that metal thing out of there without, you know, going through the snitch boxes, but they managed to do it. So he hides that in his cell. And then he's like, okay, the time has come. Smears himself with grease, like axle grease from the workshop. It's like, again, how do they not know this incredibly shiny man moving around the place? He starved himself. He puts the bar spreader in. He stretches it out. It opens to 10 inches, right? So we're talking about a lovely willy, but nothing else really. It's a medium pizza. So he's got enough room. That's how much he has to get through. So he gets through. It's obviously incredibly painful, but he's covered in this grease. There's nothing on him and he manages to get through. So he gets out onto Broadway. His friends get a signal from him and start kicking off. So all the guards go over, they've got their back turned, and he climbs up, and he grabs a riot stick. The guard comes out to check what's going on, and he batters this guard and strangles him with his own tie.
Bloody hell.
So this guard is unconscious. Yeah, and the guard is in front of the armory. So he gets loads of guns and gets his sort of affiliates. So they get these guns and they take a load of guards hostage. They take about 15 of them hostage. This is all happening in D block, and they've got them in over 2 cells. One of the guards has the key and immediately hides it in the toilet. So they're going through, they're searching all the guards, trying to find the key to get out. They can't find it because they haven't worked out that it's in the toilet. So just all hell breaks loose. They start shooting at the guards. Now, the mad thing about Alcatraz is no one is coming to help these people on D block because there's no way of communicating what's going on. No one has walkie-talkies. There's no sort of infrastructure for communication. By this point, the guy who's running it is in his 70s, which, you know, now someone in their 70s having a job is, you know, not beyond the realms of possibility. That would, you know, it would probably be their choice because of retirement age.
Well, I don't know about that. It's the fact that they're probably fucking forced into it now. That's how it feels. A lot of people just have to go and work it.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, like, you know, I was actually thinking that the other day. I was popped into Argos and there was like an older bloke behind the counter, and I thought, is he here because he wants to get out and about a bit more? Or is this because pensioners are so fucking skint that he's had to come out of his retirement to come and bloody collect shit from the back of a warehouse? I don't know. Carry on anyway. That's my other little...
No. You know, you're right. My mum's, what's she now? So she'll be a couple of years off 80 and she's still working because money, innit? There's like...
I mean, some people do want to carry on and that's great, but I do think a lot of people feel pressured into it, you know. Oh, we don't look after the elderly in this country. We're fucked.
Do you remember that? There was a documentary years ago where they had some like people from... I'm going to use very crass, problematic language, but they were from like a tribe, let's say. That's as specific as I can be because I'm dredging this up for the memory banks. And they sort of came to live in like a Western way. And it was like a swap. And weren't they like they were absolutely appalled with how the elderly were treated. They're like, hold on, they don't live with you. What, you send them somewhere else? And they were like, what? So what, there's these buildings full of where you put your old people in? And they were just appalled that is how we would treat our elderly. They were like, but they're the wisest people, they know the most, and you've just shoved them away. And they were like, this is fucked, guys.
I honestly, it's one of the big bugbears of me. You know what I'm like about older people? I hate ageism. I always have done. I hate the way we treat the elderly. I think it's absolutely appalling. I think when people get to a certain age, and I don't think it matters if you're rich, poor, whatever. I think you should get the same things. Like, I just think as a blanket thing, once you get to a certain age, you get things paid for. You get, and it's just a mark of respect. Yes, some of these people will have been paedophiles or bastards, but do you know what I mean? Like, I just think we need to make sure that older people are as comfortable as possible. I think it's just it's a mark of respect. Just, the way you treat young people and old people should be paramount, I think. It's it makes me really sad, the way elderly people, and like the loneliness and stuff like that they have. And anyway, back to this old cunt that you were talking about.
I agree. So this 70-year-old old bastard is running things. He's never been in a high stress situation like this. He's never been in like what is basically a full-on siege happening around him. It goes on to be known as the Battle of Alcatraz. So the alarm goes off,
and he's still greased
to
up,
alert the rest of the prison. And he's still greased up the whole time. Imagine all of this, he's still greased up, right? So he's greased up. They've got guns, him and his gang. They've got a load of guards in 2 cells. The main alarm goes off. It is so loud, the mainland hear it. Ooh. What happens when the mainland hear the alarm going off? Loads of journalists charter boats to go out there to run and cover the story, which is mad. Obviously, the Coast Guard is like, fuck off, and turns them around. But any story about Alcatraz was just immediately huge. So they wanted to be there. They wanted to take pictures. You can see smoke coming up from Alcatraz. They hear the gunfire because, there are guns going off. So the military get called. They're now just like desperately trying to find their way out the building. So most of them, including Bernard, are in this utility corridor. The military, coming from above, they drill holes in the ceiling above them in the corridor because they can't access them. At one point, they're like, just open fire into the wing. And they're like, you can't open fire into the wing. There's loads of people there who haven't done anything. So they drill these holes in and they drop grenades down into the utility corridor where Bernard is. And obviously they have Bernard and is it Clarence, Clarence, the young Native American guy. They set them off as absolute carnage. There's seawater coming into the block and flooding it at this point. They kill them, but it takes 2 days for them to find their bodies and confirm that they're dead. They go in and treat the guards, many of whom have been bleeding out for hours and hours and hours, like overnight. They never get outside the building, Bernard and Clarence. They never manage it. They basically die within the walls. 2 guards are killed in the Battle of Alcatraz. And then 2 inmates who were said to be involved in the planning were sent to San Quentin and were gassed while they were there.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, one of the guys, a guy called Sam, one of these young farm lads, is assessed and is found to have a mental age of 8. Can't really remember anything other than we were in the prison and we were trying to escape, like just has the most scant details, doesn't really understand what's happening, and is fucking gassed because of it.
Oh my God, that's depressing.
This battle of, it's really depressing. This Battle of Alcatraz leads to a massive, like, conditions don't get worse. They don't treat them worse, but the whole vibe changes. So no one even attempts to get out for a decade. But what this inadvertently does is it changes the culture, because before, the guards and the prisoners, they had like a kind of, not a respect for each other, but they got on okay, and they'd have sort of jokes and stuff. No one all of that goes. They say to the guards, you can't have anything to do with these prisoners. You can't have any sympathy for them. So the guards become really standoffish. The prisoners don't talk to the guards. They also stop talking to each other because they are petrified. They're going to be, on a chatty terms with someone who ends up planning an escape, and they'll end up gassed because of it.
God.
So there's this real culture of fear that starts to exist. Now, around this time, after the huge Battle of Alcatraz, Alcatraz is in trouble generally. It's on a rock. Everything has to be imported. To feed them, it costs, on average, to keep a prisoner in American sort of penal system, it's about $3 a day at this point. But with Alcatraz, you've got guards living on site. You're paying them very well so they can't be bribed. You've got to pay for their families to be here. You've got to import water. You've got to import every bit of food. It was about in excess of $10 a day per prisoner. So it's a very expensive prison. Added to that, it's being whipped by sea water all the time. The salt just erodes everything. The bars get eroded very quickly. Things are having to be constantly replaced. Even the cement is being eaten by this salt water. So at this point, they're like, what are we going to do with this place? What are we going to do with these prisoners? Now, it has this reputation for being inescapable. The botched escape plan obviously contributes to that. But the whole time, the locals in San Francisco are like, it's escapable. You can swim there and back. And the prisoners were like, no, you can't. No, you can't. No one can swim it. A local ladies swimming club goes, okay, and does it in 2 hours. Swims there and back, and we're like, there you go. We swam there in choppy tides. If it was basically a fit man who gets it where the currents and the tides are right, could basically swim from there to San Francisco in an hour.
Wow. I'd hate that.
What, to be that close to a prison where they could swim it?
No, swimming, that amount of swimming, it's hard. Isn't it? Swimming's really hard, I think.
Yeah, it is.
So tiring.
It is. And there's also rumours of sharks.
Ugh.
So there's all these rumours. Now,
the worst kind of rumour.
Shark
I've heard
rumour.
the sharks.
But that's all encouraged by the guards because they're less likely to try and break out, right? Now, there's these two prisoners, Johnson and Burgess. They have been sort of planning an escape for a while. They're outside and they're like, hold on, a scuffle has happened, let's go. They've made flippers out of wooden planks,
Wow.
right? So they go for it and they throw in the sea. Johnson immediately gets stuck in the shallow water, can't actually swim very well, so is taken back to the prison. Now Burgess, they think, makes it.
Wow.
Until 10 days later, some of the snipers see a body floating in the water with wooden flippers still attached to his feet.
That'll give it away. That'll give it away.
Yes, that is the clue. The associate warden gets his body and he puts it in the prison and he parades it through Broadway. And it's been in the water for 10 days. So it'll be in a very, very rough state. And it's basically, he's like, this is a lesson to all of you if you try and swim. This is how you'll end up. So there's just like this psychological war going against the prisoners trying to avoid escape.
It's horrible. There was 14 attempts though. The first one was in 1936. And that was Joe Bowers. He climbed over the chain link fence, refused the orders to get back down, and he was shot and he fell to 100 feet to the shore and he died. 1937, December 16th, Theodore Cole, Ralph Rowe, they filed their way through the iron bars, made their way to the water's edge, and they think they were swept out to sea. 23rd of May, 1938. This is Thomas Limerick, Jimmy Lucas, and Rufus Franklin. They attacked the guards with a hammer. One of them died. They climbed to the roof, and they shot the Harold Stites shot Limerick and Franklin. Limerick dies, and Lucas and Franklin got life sentences for the guards' murder. There's loads more. I mean, January 13th, 1939, people tried to get out. Let's have a look. 21st of May, 1941, there was a hostage situation. 15th September, 1941. There's so many. For somewhere that was like told, you can't get out of here, people gave it a good go.
They really did. But
It's almost as if saying that it's a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, because back then people did break out of prison and it was, not normal, but it was, if you could get people on the outside who would kind of back you up and you could get the right bit of contraband, it was quite common to do it. I'm going to talk about the successful escape, which is one of the maddest stories I've ever heard. So this happens June 12th, 1962. There's 4 people involved in this as a gang. So Frank Morris, who then Alan West and Frank Morris had actually been in another detention centre, let's say, together. All of these men had experience of escaping or attempted escapes. They'd have been in, juvenile penitentiaries, then they'd gone up to, state prisons. Now they'd ended up in Alcatraz because of the escaping. And 2 brothers called Clarence and John Engling. So they had been planning this. It is amazing. It is one of the most notorious escapes in the history of American prisons. They have been planning this for months and months and months. So one of the things they realise is the cement is actually quite soft at Alcatraz, but because of it's old, it's been battered by the sea winds, it's being eroded by the salt. So what they do is they start to pick around the sides of the iron bars and this cement. So they start doing that. At first they start doing it with spoons and they're like, this isn't fast enough. So one of them manages to steal bits of parts of a motor from an old Hoover and then adapts it and turns it into a drill. And so what would happen is every night between 5:30 and 9 p.m, as the Rock Islanders are playing and doing brand practice, that would be enough noise because they've got rid of the silent prison system and now it's just about being quiet, except for this one time when the band are playing. So they're like, that is enough noise to hide the sound of a drill. So every night when the band is playing at 5:30 till lights down at 9, they start drilling away around these bars. Now,
that's a long time for a band to be playing.
It's so fucking long. So long, isn't it?
That is a long time.
So what they do is they need to create fake vents. So the boxes that the tobacco arrives in, where it's imported to the island, they take the wooden slat at the bottom and they basically fashion a fake vent and paint it to make it look realistic. And then they pop the wooden fake vent back in the metal one's place, and then what they do is they cement it around the side but using kind of crap cement that they know they can wiggle out. So that's the first thing that happens. Then they keep every night they keep digging until they realize they can get out of the main cell wall, but they're still between another wall, which is what armed by guards. But then they realise, hold on, if we get out that wall, we can actually get up onto the roof. No one can see onto the roof, so we can have privacy and kind of do the next part of our plan. So what they do is they take the vents out, shut them behind it, they go up to the roof, and this is where they are incredible, the things they make. They acquire 50 raincoats from Alcatraz, and they, over the course of, this is months, make them into 4 life jackets that inflate, and an inflatable raft. How they do this is they find a hot water pump.
I thought you were going to say when they stole the raincoats, they were just going to do that thing where they sat on one of the other's shoulders and just became a really tall bloke.
I'm not a prisoner, I'm the world's tallest man and I was just here for a day visit. No, what they do is, this is so nuts to me. They've got to make seals so it can be inflatable. So what they do is they go and find a boiling water pipe, they pierce a hole in it, and they use that to steam the edges together. They are so ingenious. It's such a shame that their life circumstances and or choices have led them to the point where they're criminals, because these are brilliant scientists. They're really innovative. They're engineers. So they make this massive inflatable boat. They've all got life jackets. And then one of the things they do early doors is they make papier-mâché heads of themselves. They get hair.
What the fuck is going on?
I don't know where they're getting papier-mâché, Rachel. I don't know where they're getting it. So they make these papier-mâché heads. They get hair from the floor of the barbers. So they give themselves eyebrows. They match their own facial hair. They match the colour on their heads. And what they do is when they go out, because they're checked on, right? So they're checked on at midnight, checked on at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning are interesting because, so lights out at 9, you're checked at midnight, you're checked at 3 o'clock in the morning. But what the guards can't do is wake you, whereas they would want a reply at the first one at 6 o'clock in the morning. So they would put a torch in, see you were there, and then keep going. So what they do is they would put these papier-mâché heads in that they've made to look like themselves with real hair. They would put stuff under the like duvet, so it looked like a man was sleeping. So when they checked in and weren't looking for a reply, it's absolutely fine. The brothers get so attached to them, they name theirs Oscar and Oink, so they get really attached to their heads. And they work it all out, they plan it. And it's Frank, isn't it? Yeah, Frank Morris is the brains of the operation. He works out, okay, we are coming up to a bit where it would be great to escape. So they needed a certain tide time. It needed the tides and the current to be right, and they need it to be dark. And so they're like, okay, the time's coming. So they put their heads in the beds. They hide them, they stuff it with blankets so it looks like someone's sleeping. And they're like, tonight's the night. They go up. Alan can't. He's used too much concrete. He can't get the wooden grill off. So Alan West just has to stay behind. And the brothers and Frank Morris go up to the room to carry on the plan. Now, they go to the North Beach because the North Shore is a blind spot. It can't be seen by the snipers. So they head out. Now, they have to break out of a big vent. At 10:30, the guards hear a huge crashing metallic sound. But they're like, you know what? Lights out, everything was fine. The head count was fine. We're going to check them in an hour and a half anyway. I'm sure it's nothing. They check them at midnight and they're like, it was nothing because they're all in place. But that was the sound of the vent being kind of lifted off. So they get out, they go down to this North Shore. They have stolen some bellows from somewhere in the place. They inflate this raft up. They get in it. And then they set sail. They'd made some paddles out of like wood and some screws that they'd stolen. So they go off. Now, they're checked at midnight. They're absolutely fine. They're checked at 3 a.m. And at 6 a.m., one of the guards is checking on Frank. And is like, no, he's checking on one of the brothers. And he doesn't reply. And then he puts his hand through the bars and shakes him. And as he shakes him, his head comes off and rolls across the floor, and the guard is like, oh my God, I fucking murdered this guy. Has like a massive meltdown, and then it's like, hold on a second. That guy's, and sees it's papier-mâché, calls the alert, but by this time, bearing in mind they set off, at like midnight, they've had a good 6 hours now. They're well on their way. Now, no one thinks they can survive in those waters. They search all the cells. They find that Alan West has these wooden bars. So he tells them the whole plan, squeals, and they're like, right, okay, we're looking for a raft. They go out looking for a raft. It's never found.
Wow.
Now, a few days later, a paddle washes up. So they're like, see, look that, they've drowned. None of them have survived. With the paddle is a plastic wallet with like addresses of friends in there, details, ID documents, things like that. And they were like, look, this is further proof that you cannot escape from Alcatraz. They drowned and died. And if anyone else tries, you will also drown and die. It's a huge news story, obviously absolutely massive, because it's Alcatraz, because it's a daring escape, because it's so complicated. And then about a week later, a couple of life jackets are found on the shore of San Francisco under the Golden Gate Bridge, and they realised that they made it.
Wow.
And they are never seen. Years later, well, not that long after, a witness says that they see them all together, very shortly after the escape, but they're never seen again.
Wow. Did they make it, though?
Well, a witness says that they are seen. And there are various sightings of them over the years. And also, do you know what came forward is someone came forward about the brothers and said, they were like, oh, they were drowned, no one could swim it. And that was at the point where a man was like, give me an hour, I reckon I could swim there, and does it in the same tidal conditions and was like, yeah, this can be done very easily. And that's when the friends of the brothers turned around and went, they were amazing swimmers. And they used to swim. They're really strong swimmers. And they would swim through horrific conditions, moving around ice, like lumps of ice in the winter. And they were just like nutters, these brothers. So what we do know is that they had a good raft. They had life jackets if the raft failed. We knew that they did it in the most favourable, straightforward conditions. We know that at least 2 of them were incredible swimmers, and we know that and we know that life jackets were found on the shore, and we know that people who looked like them were spotted.
Well, there's 2 things I think about that. The first thing, they could have arranged for somebody to collect them when they arrived at the thing. But also, why would you take your life jacket off? Wouldn't you just take it with you so there was no...
No, I think that's evidence.
No, like, why would you...
I think I would dump it somewhere far away.
Or do you think they left it there as to say, haha, we did it?
Probably, yeah. Because it's much about the psychological game with Alcatraz, isn't it? You know, hence the rumours about sharks and things like that. So, so Alcatraz has already been in the crosshairs in terms of this is costing us a fucking fortune and it's falling apart and it's a nightmare. Then there's the escape. 9 months later, it shuts down. Everyone says it's because it's now an escapable prison. It wasn't that. It was always going to be shut down. The government are looking just to cut money, and also it's very unpopular to go, we're going to spend this much on Alcatraz. The locals hate it. People think it's unfair on the people who are in there. Like, it's just an unpopular, bad PR exercise. So it falls into a thing called surplus property. Which means it's like the government own it, but they don't really want anything to do with it. They certainly don't want the responsibility for it. Now, there's a treaty called the Treaty of Fort Laramie that says, basically, when they were robbing all the Native Americans of their land, they do this treaty and they go, listen, if at any point something falls into surplus property, then you have a right to make a claim for it if you were part of the original tribe that might have, sorry if I'm not using the right word there, but, I think it is tribe, that may have had a stake to that. So living in San Francisco at this time is a brilliant person who is of Sioux Indian descent. They're a social worker and they're also a civil rights activist. And they realise, hold on, well, if Alcatraz is surplus property, we can lay a claim to it as Native Americans. This is, the Sioux Indians can go and make a claim for it. So they occupy Alcatraz because they realise it's going to be good PR. It's a very symbolic thing. It's somewhere that like nothing grows. That's exactly the kind of land that the Native Americans were left with. So in 1969, 19 months of occupation begins. Now it's a very small group. I think in fact, there's 19 of them to begin with. They are Native Americans and there's women and children and men there. Now, because it's the rock and there's nothing can grow, they're reliant on sort of benefactors. So the local universities in San Francisco were like, yeah, we believe in your cause. And they send them food out there. And that's against the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard have been told, you don't let anything on or off that island. These people are illegally occupying it, even though it's surplus land. And the university's like, no, fuck you. And they send food. Local people would send over clothing and toiletries. The government would do awful things like cut the electric off at the coldest time in the year, made it really inhospitable, but they were massively supported by the local community and various institutions like the universities. Jane Fonda came and visited, which was great for PR. Marlon Brando came and visited and brought supplies over.
Oh, I bet he fucking did. Brought some scran, have you, Marlon? Of course you have.
So whilst the Native Americans are occupying it, they say, we would like to make a formal request to build a school here and an information centre that that tells you about the area according to our histories and our people and our stories. And the government like, no, fuck off, we're not recognising your legitimacy. And they were like, okay, well, let us buy it back then, because you sold us our land for 49 cents an acre. So let us buy this 22 acres back at 49 cents an acre. And the government and the local state are so embarrassed by all this. They're like, no, we're not doing that. Obviously, we're not doing that, because that recognises them as being legitimate. Then what happens is hippies turn up. who were like, hey, this looks cool, we'll be part of the cause, and basically become big pains in the ass. There's a fire there that burns out one of the buildings, and a teenager accidentally dies in quite tragic circumstances. Then the tide turns and popular opinion. No one really knows why they're there anymore. They understood why the Native Americans were there. They don't really understand why there's just loads of hippies starting fires there now. So there's like messaging. The messaging has become muddled, which means the public support wanes, which means that, they're getting fewer supplies. It just becomes a really difficult position to hold, and essentially it ends. And the government were like, right, there's enough lack of support now that we'll just do it, and they storm it. Mm-hmm. At that point, there's only 15 people there. Most of them are women and children who've just sort of settled. So they storm it, they remove everyone from the island, and then they kind of put the island on shutdown, and it's left like that for 9 years. And then it's given to the national park. So like, we don't fucking know what to do with it. And it still has this massive reputation as being the inescapable island. There's triathlons that are themed, called like the Escape from Alcatraz triathlon, to show that it can be escaped from. It shows that you can, if you're a strong swimmer, get across, like I say, in about an hour. But then it becomes pretty much the biggest tourist attraction in and around San Francisco, and is basically, that's what it is today.
Cannot think of a worse day out. It's just not for me. Thank you. That's Alcatraz.
That is Alcatraz.
That sounds like an old saying. Well, that's Alcatraz.
I think it is there's certain places and times in history where, like, like the Hotel Cecil, just because of where it was and like the era it was sort of, popular, for want of a better phrase. You just get like these sets of amazing things happening, because Alcatraz as a prison wasn't that old, but like the things that happened, the deaths, the people who died by suicide, the murders, Al Capone was there. You got this Birdman, that crazy escape. It's just like some places become like I can't think of the word, but just this centre for like wild stuff, and Alcatraz is one of them. So that is the story of it. And do you know what? If anyone wants to give me, apparently it's much cheaper if you book in advance. I absolutely love a free day out to Alcatraz.
I mean, I'd go for free. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but I just, as a day out goes, I just don't think that that's something I would enjoy. Just not my bag. I'll read about it. I don't need to go.
You don't want a little boat ride?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go on a boat. I love a boat. But to somewhere nice. I don't want to go to a fucking old prison. Take me on a boat to... I had a lovely boat trip when I went to Antigua. Lovely boat trip. Where did we go? A little island in the Caribbean that nobody lived on. Oh, yes, please. Rum punch, thank you. That's a boat trip. Fucking Alcatraz, no. Anyway, that's Alcatraz. That's Alcatraz.
Thank you for listening. If you can recommend any lovely little boat trips in Australia or New Zealand, please remember that we are... Do you know what? I've seen the sales, Rachel. It's selling amazingly.
Oh, brilliant. That's good. I don't...
Really good.
I don't
There's
check.
some dates where like well over half the tickets have gone already.
Lovely.
So if you want to come and see us in Australia or New Zealand, please do go and book soon. You can get all the tickets from both of our websites. We're doing solo shows out there as well. And we hope you have a very Merry Christmas.
Happy Christmas. I'm on tour in February, March, April. RachelFairburn.com. Come, don't come. I'd like you to, but you don't have to.
I'm doing my 2 rescheduled shows in Bangor, North Wales on whatever the last Saturday and Sunday in January is there. So there's still a few tickets left if you want to come.
Anyway, Merry Christmas. Don't be buying anything on Christmas Day. Just enjoy yourselves.
Just enjoy yourselves, loves. Nadolig llawen a blwyddyn newydd dda. We'll see you in the new year.